Na 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 na. Hey, gotta love that podcast show. Na 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 na. Hey, yeah, I love that podcast show. Oh, BS and beer is the place to go to get all the Saints news. Hell yeah, podcast show. Na 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 na. Hey, gotta love that podcast show. Na 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 na. Hey, yeah, I love your podcast show.
Now, recording live, it's the BS and Beer Podcast crew with your host, David Romero.
Welcome in another week, another edition. It's the BS and Beer Podcast crew recording live from our new studios at Meat House Fork. This week, the New Orleans Saints pull off an overtime victory against, and I didn't say San Diego Chargers, against the Los Angeles Chargers. Pull off a victory, a frustrating game. One of those games where, I think the Saints went in the game thinking that they could probably get away with this one by just running the ball and not making any mistakes. The problem is, made too many mistakes. They got behind and had to have almost an improbable comeback because statistically speaking, whether you realize it or not, I think the Saints were, and I'm sorry I don't have this number, but 2-40 some odd in games where they got down by 17 or more. So for them to be able to come back, what you saw Monday night was somewhat historic. Another thing is, we're looking at a battle of two worlds. I know, even myself, I'm a little critical about the offense and how we're throwing the ball so short and what have you, but the Saints are averaging almost 30 points a game. Teams that average scoring 30 points a game have winning records. Teams like the Saints, who are giving up more than 30 points a game, have losing records. So we're in a quagmire here. What is it? The Saints offense is scoring points, even though it might be in a little bit of a frustrating way. The Saints defense is giving away points at a record pace, maybe not record pace, but at too fast a pace. And teams that give up as many points as the Saints are giving up traditionally end up with losing records over the course of the season. So it's a matter if the Saints will be able to clean that up, get to the point where they can stop somebody. And it's not that they can't stop people. It's what's happening is they're giving up big plays. They're dropping coverage. You saw Patrick Robinson give up a very long touchdown. It looked like, and from what I've heard, is actually expecting safety help. The safety help didn't come, and he releases a guy. So you're talking about miscommunication, drop coverage, not necessarily a physical error, but a mental error. And it just seems like those things keep happening. The Saints have 2 weeks in a row now dug themselves a big hole, but managed to come out of it. So at some point, they're going to have to get to where they're not giving up these huge plays. They're making plays on offense, scoring points, holding the other team to a reasonable amount of points. If, again, you got to keep in mind, I'm hanging on. I haven't decided yet to give up, to say this is just not a Super Bowl team. There's still this glimmer of hope that I have that the Saints will turn it around and become a more consistent team. The defense that we saw at times last year will get better. We saw the return of my guy, Marcus Davenport, and I always have to explain this. Listen, I'm not trying to say Marcus Davenport is a premier pass rusher, but what he does is add pass rush and disruption to the Saints defense. And you saw it last night. He had several plays disruptive. Hendrickson is now consistently proven that he can rush the passer and even play the run pretty well. So now the Saints should have a good three-man rotation. They have Granderson, who can also throw in a little bit as well. Still young and maybe not nearly as consistent as the other players, but put the Saints in a position where their defense can improve. So we will have to keep an eye on that, because the Saints, if they expect to win, they'll have to get better on offense, which you would think that maybe bringing in, you see now that Sanders is getting acclimated into the offense. He had a great game, 12 receptions, and now he's in a position where he can make an impact. And then once you start getting a guy like Thomas back, then you'll start seeing more one-on-one coverage and more opportunities for him. Now, the problem is, let's talk about Thomas for a second. So news breaks on Tuesday that there's a little bit more to the story, which I knew it already. not literally knew it, but there's just something that's not right about, well, he got in a fight with a teammate and punched a teammate that had a helmet on. That kind of nonsense happens all the time. You see it in games where a player will literally take a swing at a guy with a helmet. All he's going to do is break his hand. You can't convince me that that's why the team suspended him for the game. The next thing is we heard, well, he was disrespectful to the coaches. Now, look, any of you guys have been in a fight out there. You know that when the adrenaline's pumping, you're going to say whatever. So you can't convince me that after he got in a fight, somebody corrected him and he cussed the coach out and they're going to say, well, we're going to sit you down for a game and lose probably the best offensive playmaker that the team has. So now the word's starting to leak out that apparently Michael Thomas, maybe the new contract's going to his head, but he's turned into a jerk. So it's being disrespectful to the coaches on a regular basis, apparently being aloof and dismissive in meetings. There was something about opening mail that wasn't his, being really a jerk to the training staff, taping his ankles and yelling at people because it's not done the way he likes. And it seems as this is being or has become a new thing, meaning his personality, because he's always been, from all reports, pretty humble. And now things are starting to change. And, it's disappointing when a guy gets a new contract, and whether it's a new contract, comes into money or comes into, some kind of position, got a promotion at work or something where, golly, man, he just starts changing because either the money or the position or the power or whatever changed in their life changes them. So it's disappointing to see. We all know receivers can be a little bit of divas anyway. And so hopefully it's just that. Apparently several of his teammates have had mentor type conversations with him. So let's see if maybe that wasn't maybe a turning point where he realizes maybe I have been going a little bit too far. I got suspended. Let's reel it in a little bit. Yeah, I'm still going to be me. I'm still going to be cocky. I'm still going to be, receiver, but maybe I'm taking a little bit too far. Hopefully we'll start seeing that improvement, because the last thing you want is to get that huge contract and it start causing issues in the locker room. All right, so today we're going to bring in Heath Elsonson. We're going to bring in Wesley Coleman. We also have a segment with Tomas Mauricio. So grab a drink, sit back and relax, because we're about to do Dome Patrol United, the New Orleans Saints, BS and Beer style. You're not going to want to miss it.
Tonight on BS and Beer Radio Broadcast Corporation Incorporated, it's the Action Suspense Airline Highway at 9:30, followed by this year's award-winning suspense thriller Camp Beast. Next, it's hilarious family fun suitable for all ages with Drew, Sean, and Mickey. Then it's Sex in the Cell Block, the hot new show that's too racy for daytime. That's Sex in the Cell Block at 11 tonight. Then it's Saints Talk with Dave, Tomas, Heath, and the BS and Beer podcast crew. Every night here on the BS&B Radio Broadcast Corporation Incorporated, a limited liability corporation.
All right, let's bring in Wesley Coleman and Heath Elsonson. Guys, I'm going to start off with you. I guess we'll go with Heath. Just the way that this game unfolded, if you just look at the second half, or maybe like Detroit, if the first half was the second half, we'd be talking about how, we dominated them, and then we took our foot off the pedal. But this is 2 weeks in a row where we start off hot and start off cold and then got hot later. This game seemed to take a little bit longer. Heath, do we underestimate how good the defense is for the Chargers?
Possibly. I certainly didn't think they were that good overall, but as they talked about during the game, they did the same thing to Kansas City early in that game, and
right.
That's another good team. I can't remember who it was, up by 14, by 10, whatever it is. So, and they've lost so many one-score games that this seems to be a pattern for them. They start out hot and then they fade. And there's some similarities that I see in that from Detroit last week. They kind of have the same problem. They're in games, they even lead games, and then they peter out at the end. And so, I think the Saints, each game is kind of like a microcosm of the overall season. They're slow starters, and now we've turned into slow starters in each individual game.
Right. Wesley.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Wesley, the Saints, if defensively at least, man, if we don't give up big plays, the defense actually, that's the most pressure I recall seeing all year. And the Saints actually seem to make plays until they give up these humongous plays.
I mean, you're talking about a 64 and a 49-yard pass that were complete breakdowns in coverage that led to half of the Chargers' points, more than half of their points, and I mean a good chunk of their yardage. I mean that's almost half of the passing yardage that Herbert
Right.
had the entire game on 2 plays, and it's 2 plays that weren't confusing plays, but that a cornerback completely just
Drops coverage.
like I'm just gonna stop. I'm gonna stop covering this guy for the rest of this play. I mean, now honestly, that sounds like huge busted coverages resulting in 50-yard plays don't happen a ton in the NFL, outside of what we've seen this year for the Saints.
Right.
So you would think something that's fixable, because I mean, it's not even like extreme discipline. There's just a few things. I mean, but it happening twice in a game makes a game, a non-competitive game, very competitive.
Right. Because, I mean, okay, listen, obviously all of us had our feelings about the game, and it just is very discouraging. Especially, I think that now I've realized that my expectations are so high that it's just extremely frustrating when we not only don't reach the expectations, but fall well below it. But if you have a little time to think about it, like usual, if you take out those busted plays, I mean, the game was never, and then not to mention just not busted defense, but if you also realize they got a touchdown, they started their drive at the 1 yard line after a Breeze interception. I mean, is the defense as bad as what we're seeing? And again, I'm not taking out the just busted plays. As Wesley said, if we were able to find a way to correct those little problems, is this defense as bad as what we're seeing right now? Or feeling might be the wrong.
Certainly. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously they're not as bad as what they've looked at times this season. I mean, that's the hardest thing to figure out right now about the Saints defense is that, hell, being a Saints and an LSU fan, I know a lot of people that listen to this probably aren't, but look at the similarities, but also the differences between those two teams right now. LSU's is almost completely on coaching. But the Saints have not changed defensive schemes. They didn't install new defensive looks, at least not that I heard of. And everybody playing in the defensive backfield has been in this system before, right? It a little bit, at least last year, if not longer. So it's not like they shouldn't be having communication issues on breakdowns. And, these just seem to, but then you think to yourself, well, how are they all seem to be playing so poorly at the same time? Like what happened all of a sudden that all of them have breakdowns. Lattimore is getting beat on a regular basis. Patrick Robinson with that one, mental mistake he made where he passed the guy. He thought he was passing him off to somebody. You could see by his reaction during and after the play. And it was pretty clear that it must have been on him that he just completely misunderstood what coverage they were in or whatever. But it's like, these are all solid guys. I mean, these are guys with a lot of experience, I don't know. I can't really explain what's happening right now, but no, the defense is obviously not as bad as it looks. It should be quite the opposite, quite frankly. This should be a top 10 defense when you look at the talent and all that it has.
Well, so before we get into the good, say again.
I mean, and we'll talk about this later, but in the front 7, this is a top 5 defense. I mean,
on paper, yeah.
But Anzalone's have, but what our defensive line has done with the run and then some pass rush, especially in this pass game, I mean, they can be. We've got a couple of people that are being knuckleheads on the back end.
And I talked about mistakes. I talked about the drop coverage. I talked about the interception. I mean, actually, and again, I would almost go into a whole nother conversation about how disappointed I am in the Saints and not living up to expectations. But let me throw another thing in there where you have the Chargers stopped on a 3rd and 14, and you rough the kicker or rough the punter, and that turns into points. So the point is that if you eliminate these mistakes, this game isn't even close. Now, the Saints obviously went in there. Heath alluded to how the Saints obviously respected the Chargers. They were trying to run the ball. They were trying to, keep the Chargers at bay defensively. And I even said during the game, it felt like the Saints just felt like if they just avoid making a big mistake, they'll win the game. That's how it felt. It felt like the Saints were happy just to, although it's kind of common now, this is a short passing game, run the ball. And then all of a sudden it's drop coverage, touchdown, interception, 1 yard line, touchdown. And next thing you know, you got to start playing football. So you don't know exactly what team it is, because it kind of feels like that was their game plan going in until they made so many mistakes that they got down really far. But again, now I keep going all these different, it's kind of been the Saints' MO so far this season. They're not the team that avoids mistakes. They're making too many mistakes.
100%. And I mean, special teams is weird because I really do believe, I think before this game, Thomas Morstead had 6 bad quarters of punting, which he normally doesn't have. But outside of that, I think we have the best special teams in football this year. And then we get all these holding penalties, two holding penalties by JT Gray, who is one of the best special teams coverage guys in the NFL. I mean, he has been consistently, cost us 60 yards of
return yardage.
60 yards. And then you get, which doesn't show up in the penalty yardage because it just shows the 10-yard penalty. And then Washington getting in there. And again, ticky-tack. I mean, and the dumb announcers are like, oh, it looked like he tried to body slam him. He tried to hold the guy from falling. I mean,
but I don't think, there's no argument that was roughing the kicker.
Yeah, sure. But I understand them doing it from their perception. He ran into the kicker. I mean, you got to
right.
do that. I went mad either way. But those 3 plays just turns around field position and turnover and makes the whole game very different right there. Maybe. Because having said that, for 28 minutes, we were the worst team I've seen in football this year.
Yeah, it's hard to argue.
We were the Jets for 28 minutes. For 28 minutes, we were the New York Jets on offense and defense. And I say defense. Defense had 4 3-and-outs, almost a fifth. So defense jumped in a little bit. Well, I don't know. I had a whole lot of, if we go into halftime like this, like a whole lot of thoughts about what I thought should happen at halftime that were outside of my, normal optimistic norm. I was really pissed off and discouraged.
Okay, so I'm gonna go into this before we go into the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm gonna go into this and say, last night I came to the conclusion. This morning I feel a little bit better about what is this team, because I had this feeling in the offseason, and I think I just don't want to admit it. But is this team good enough to advance in the playoffs? I believe they're good enough to win 10, 11, maybe even 12 games. But the reason I gave that big old thing in the offseason about Drew Brees and if he retires and the point is I don't know if we're good enough to get in the playoffs and win the way the Saints play football right now. I'm going to start with Heath. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, it's certainly hard to imagine that right now. Overall, is this team better than what we've seen here so far? Yeah, obviously, But I was of the same opinion last year. When last season came to an end after that loss to Minnesota, I was like, it's time to move on, right? It's time to blow this thing up. It's just our best now at this point with this team just isn't good enough anymore. And then we made some improvements. We brought in Emmanuel Sanders, this, that, and the other. And I thought, okay, maybe we made enough improvements, enough pieces to add. But what I'm seeing out of Drew Brees right now, even though he completed a lot of passes last night, and at the end of the day, he got the job done as far as he continues to have un-Brees-like throws, just inaccuracies and things that just really bother him. More so, the story has been the air yards and whether they're protecting his arm and they're calling the game different because he literally can't. We saw he could throw the ball down the field. We saw him throw it way down the field to Jared Cook last night. There was another pass that was incomplete, but the most zip I've seen Drew Brees put on the ball in 5 years probably was a pass he threw to the end zone that wound up going off of somebody's hands.
To Jared Cook, yes, I remember that.
Yeah, when he threw it for a second, I thought I missed that they put Taysom Hill back in the game. The ball came off his hand. He had some zip on the ball. But the real story with Drew Brees, as we've touched on throughout these shows, is that he's just been un-Drew Brees-like in his accuracy. And so, and I think it was you last night that, you know, when he takes his helmet, just everything about him, all of a sudden I'm looking at Drew Brees and I'm going, man, he's old. Like, you know, and you said it last night and it's like, yeah, he just doesn't look like that, especially when they put the picture of him up in his rookie year, you know, and you go, yeah, it's been a long time, man. You know, I don't know, man. You know, on paper, should they be? Probably still, despite everything I just said, yeah. Do I think they'll get there now from where they are? It's hard for me to see it. That's
Right.
all I can.
Wesley, your general overview going into the bye week now, the Saints, are they a team that's capable of advancing in the playoffs?
Yeah, so no football team stays healthy all year, but I just want to say we have not had, in which to pick two people who we predict to be big players on our team. Marcus Davenport and Michael Thomas have not played in the same game this year. Okay, Marcus Davenport was considered to be one of the biggest parts of our defense because he gets lots of pressures when he's healthy. He opens stuff up for the line. The line still doesn't go without him, but he's better. The team's better if he's part of the rotation.
True.
Michael Thomas was the offensive player of the year last year. If we talk about it, and what we're saying is accurate, that Drew Brees can't throw the ball as deep downfield and isn't as accurate, Michael Thomas makes him better because Traquan Smith is not Michael Thomas.
Absolutely.
So we'll take those. We have to be better with healthy Michael Thomas and Marcus Davenport. Offense and defense would be improved. I don't want to ignore like the numbers that, you know, Drew Brees started 5 of 10 for 32 yards and an interception, and then had an amazing game of 28 for 37 for 293, threw a touchdown and rushed for one. But the point, and I mean, he was 6 for 7 in the second half on passes over 10 yards. Well, one of them was Jared Cook wide open. One of them was Alvin Kamara making one of the best catches I've ever seen anyone make.
Oh, yes.
Which was a good throw by Brees. It could have been intercepted just as easy as it could have been caught, or easier. And Emmanuel Sanders was not getting credit last night. They were like, oh, great pass by Brees. Emmanuel Sanders was jumping up on inaccurate balls, getting slammed to the ground. Drew Brees' numbers looked good, but he wasn't accurate on those 10-yard passes. Emmanuel Sanders Jared Cook was wide open. Like, if I could throw the ball 31 yards, I could have hit Jared Cook there. So I'm not sure. I don't know what Drew Brees is right now. And the numbers look really good, and it's really easy for us to go like, oh, okay, they figured it out. They got going into this first half. But that's not the game I watched. I did not watch. Still, even on those short passes, Drew Brees is throwing behind people and over people and short, even on short passes. And I'm watching receivers go up and make really good catches. Traquan Smith made 2 great catches last week that Brees got credit for when it was Traquan making great catches. So, yes, I do think this team can be better. But like I said a couple of weeks ago, this is not the Drew Brees-led Saints. We cannot go to that. I don't want Taysom Hill getting more snaps, but we don't need to go into this is not Drew Brees going to throw 20 yards downfield, lead us down this quick strike offense and all that. That's not what we can do.
Right. All right, let's get to the good, the bad, and the ugly.
You're a bounty hunter. Man's got to do something for a living these days. Dying ain't much of a living, boy.
It's time for the On Fleek, the Salty, and the Ratchet.
Let's go ahead. Let's start. Heath, we'll start with you. Give us your good, what players you thought played the best or maybe made a difference or stood out to you.
Well, I don't know if I'm stealing Wesley's or not because he just touched on it, but my good coming into this was Emmanuel Sanders, right? I mean, he finally showed up and was the guy, filled in and was the guy that we expected to get. How many catches did he even have lately? He wound up with 15 or something?
12.
Well, 12. Wesley already alluded to, a lot of those were really good catches on his part. And I'm surprised he didn't get hurt because there were a couple where Drew Brees really left him out there in the middle of the field that he got clobbered on a couple of times. And so, that really him. And then I'll give a little bit of no, that's all right. I won't take any more in case of Steph or anybody. But yeah, that's mine is Emmanuel Sanders.
Well, you know what?
Finally just gave us what we really needed with the absence of Michael Thomas last night.
Let me tell you, it's one thing when you talk about different types of receivers and you have Michael Thomas, who's a big, strong possession receiver. And then you think, well, is it really advantageous to have a speed guy, a deep threat? But Emmanuel Sanders' skill set, while I'm sure he can go deep, what he does is more of a shifty guy that can get open in space and create problems, but not necessarily someone like dog. I won't be able to remember his name. The kid last year that came from Carolina, the receiver we let go. That his only real contribution, Ted Ginn, is going deep, which isn't really a strong set of the Saints offense and Drew Brees' arm. So to have a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, him and Ted Ginn are just two completely different receivers and two completely different sets receivers from Thomas. So to have an Emmanuel Sanders, now you got a guy that's just shifty. You give him the ball quick, he can make somebody miss. And then you also have Michael Thomas, and both of them are the type of guys that'll be successful in a West Coast offense where you're really dealing with short area passing. So I thought that was interesting. All right, Wesley, give me your good.
Yeah, so I was going to go with Cam Jordan because I've been tough on him this year. I'll admit that. I mean, he had 10 tackles, 5 solos, half a sack, and 3 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit. But honestly, I think that would be just singling him out would be wrong. It's just saying the pass rush. Our pass rush, we got 3 sacks, 8.5 tackles for a loss, 3 passes defense, and 12 quarterback hits. And we actually got 7 pressures and 2 sacks when we only rushed 4 people. It was not all blitzes that were getting there. And again, if the front 4 can get there, that leaves more people to defend. And that's why I think we actually did better the majority of this game, except for 2 big plays. And those 2 big plays were on blitzes, by the way, so maybe are blitzing a little less because we are getting home with 4 guys, but they had a great game. Hendrickson started off real strong in the first. He faded a little bit later, but then he came back and made a play in the 4th. Davenport was in there getting busy. Onyemata made a couple of big plays in the backfield.
Rankins too.
Honestly, It could have been way worse. We missed tackles in the backfield. We missed like 4 huge tackles in the backfield. Did the guy end up getting 6 or 7 yards because 2 guys missed them? This could have been a pretty ugly game or great game from our front 4, and they actually missed a few tackles, but great game from them. It shows us where our defense can go if the guys on the back end can just do honestly an average job.
Well, I agree with that. And I think, I'm a big fan of Marcus Davenport, and I'm also pulling for him because I just think of the unfair criticism he's taken in the offseason. He was disruptive. And the funny thing that I notice about him, we think of the athleticism, and he's long and he's athletic, but he's more of a power guy. He's built more, not built, but he plays a game more similar to Cam Jordan than he does having a speed rusher. And having Trey Hendrickson and Davenport back, you now have a good rotation of 3 defensive ends that can affect the quarterback. And I think that's the biggest thing that's been missing so far in the Saints defense is just not having that immediate pressure, So I like that. I wanted to look for a good on my notes here, but boy, I think you guys touched on the ones that I like the most, and the rest of them, it's all stuff that I want to criticize. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the bad ugly. Heath, give me a bad ugly, and I bet you have a few for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's several choices I could go here, but I'm going to go with, I don't know, I'm going to call it energy / physicality, right? And this is something that I've really noticed with the Saints in the 3 games in the Superdome. And, I don't know if it's that the Saints are so used to being in that building and having so much energy. And now with no fans in the stadium, maybe that's what we're seeing in the games in the Dome because they have not played well. The one game, the best game that they had for the longest stretch came in Detroit, But what really stood out to me last night was that, Wesley, just some of the missed tackles, but even more so than that, what was, I can't think of the Chargers running back right now, the main running back that played last night. Jackson, yeah. He doesn't look like that big of a guy to me. I wanted to go look up and see what his eyes and all. But, there were several times when he hit the pile, and by himself, without one of his linemen coming up from behind, he was able to shove it another 3, 4, maybe even more yards. And I don't mean where he broke a tackle and got free again. Never broke contact with multiple Saints players, but yet was able to continue to push the pile. you know, it really wasn't until the very end of the game in the very last play of the game, when Lattimore was able to keep Mike Williams from getting that first down, that the Saints didn't get pushed back on a, you know, and I realized they didn't run for a ton of yards and all. That's not what I'm saying, but this team just, to me, at times, they just look like they're on sleepwalking. They're asleep at the wheel a little bit. They just don't quite have the energy. You know, I see the other team, the Chargers were pretty fired up last night at times, you know, noticeably on defense and everything. And the Saints just seem to be lacking that energy for whatever reason.
I agree with you. And I have to believe it does have to do, you got, what is it, 80-something thousand people in the Superdome, or is it 72,000?
Whatever,
hyped up fans, and now you playing in front of literally an empty Superdome, and all you're doing is, most of the hype that you see, I think, is self-created, trying to pretend that you're excited and hyped up. And you know what hypes you up is the atmosphere, is the energy that's created, and there's zero energy, which obviously hurts the Saints for home games, not just crowd noise, but it also hurts them just on the emotional level. So there's so many things that when I want to say, and I did say earlier that I'm now at the point where I'm running out of excuses. I'm running out of, well, we didn't have an offense or an off season, so the offense is struggling. Oh, well, we don't have fans, so the defense is struggling. Somehow or another, they have to find a way, and maybe it will improve when fans get back into the Superdome. But it's something that's obviously missing, and you can feel it. Wesley. Yeah. Give me one.
Well, hold on real quick before you go,
okay.
Wesley. As an extension to that, let me take this opportunity to throw a bad ugly out to Mrs. Mayor of New Orleans or Mr. Governor. I'm not actually sure where the leakage is, the breakdown is, since I don't actually live in Louisiana.
It's the mayor of New Orleans.
Okay, that's what I thought. I've read that, but then I think, okay, well, I don't necessarily know if the mayor's hands are tied or not. But okay, so Mrs. Mayor, figure out a way to get at least 25,000 people in the stadium like everybody else seems to be able to do now. Okay, enough is enough. We're 5 weeks into the season. It's time to get at least some people into the stands back in the Superdome. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, we have the Mafia still running New Orleans. It'd be the Super open at capacity.
Yeah.
All days. Okay. If I told you guys going into this game with what we thought we would see and what we had seen last week, that Alvin Kamara was going to average 4.1 yards a carry, Latavius Murray was going to average 4.3 yards a carry, Alvin Kamara was going to average 9.3 yards a catch, and Murray was going to average 11.5 yards a catch, what would you have predicted the score would be? I mean,
yeah,
blowouts.
Yeah.
Okay. The two of them rushed the ball 19 times combined. What in the hell is going on? And I pointed this out to you last night. For 28 minutes, or I said this morning, 28 minutes, I think we're the worst team I've seen in football this year. The 2-minute offense that worked, Drew Brees is the one that calls the plays there. Now, I've already talked about how I feel about his execution on a lot of the game, but Sean Payton called the plays for the first 28 minutes of the first half. And it made no sense to me what we were watching. I continue to consistently question what is going on in his head. And that's before we even mention Taysom Hill. And once Brees is struggling, hasn't been great this year, he throws 5 or 6 completions in a row. And here comes Taysom Hill. Which again, if you're going to commit to it, then okay, then the ridiculous stuff we talked about with him playing 20% of the snaps, at least Brees would get used to not being in a rhythm. I don't know. But this makes no sense. And it doesn't work anytime. The worst thing that happened last night was Taysom Hill getting a touchdown and us winning the game probably, because maybe that would be over for the season or at least a few weeks if he had been stopped there, or Brees would have come in on 4th down and thrown the touchdown. We get it. Sometimes it's cute when Peyton wants to be the smartest guy in the room. And it's worked with Deontay Harris. But let's say it didn't work this year with Ty Montgomery. He did nothing. It never worked with Tommy Lee Lewis. There's a whole bunch of people that it didn't work with. And just he's supposedly an offensive genius, and I believe that. I believe he's a great offensive caller, and I believe he has super talented offensive players.
Bounty hunter.
We don't need
Man's
to think
gotta do
so
something
far
for a
outside
living
the box
these
that we
days.
don't even see the box anymore.
Dying ain't much of a living, boy.
I'm super frustrated with it.
It's
I'm
time
serious.
for the
It's
on
just with
fleek,
two-minute drive,
the
I was
salty,
just
and the
appalled.
ratchet.
And then I kind of got excited about the 2-minute drive, and then I text you guys. I'm like, Drew Brees just called all those plays for the first time.
Right. You did point that out during the
It
game.
looked like an offense. My bad ugly is Sean Payton. Play calling. Again, I think this is a real easy, great time to have a bye week. Wonderful to have a winning record and be 3-2 after probably the three of the 5 worst called games he's ever had. But stop thinking I hope he doesn't use the bye week to think of more weird plays instead of just getting back to our basic offense and using the weapons that we have.
All right, I think that's well said, Wesley. At one point early in the game, I said, "Is this what committing to the running game looks like?" And here's the thing about it is, and this is feelings. Let's talk about feelings for a second. It feels like when the Saints try to become a running team, they have the offensive line. They built the offensive line for it. We have an offensive lineman in Pete that supposedly he fails in pass protection often, but apparently is a great run blocker. And yet, when we try to run the ball, just something bogs down. When we try to be a running team, I'm not saying we should never run the ball, but and just something doesn't feel right. And with Brees, it also feels like when he only, you run the ball on first down, you run the ball on second down. It's kind of like that shooter that in basketball that you never pass the ball to, and then all of a sudden at the end of the game, you throw him the ball, and he's supposed to be in a rhythm of some sort. And so the thing it feels like is that it feels like when Drew Brees is the quarterback of this team, that being a running team just, and again, there's going to be exceptions. There's going to be teams that you could just run all over. But it just feels like when Drew Brees is not throwing the ball as the dominant part of the offense, that everything just bogs down. And until they get back to whether he's, throwing it down the field or accurately or not accurately, whatever it is, when Drew Brees is not the main cog in the offense seems like it doesn't work. So can I get some feedback on that? Any thought of my feelings?
I would agree with that. We've always said the Saints pass to open up the run, and I don't think that's changed at all. I do find it surprising, again, with Sean Payton with the play call. Yeah, I get you want to run the ball sometimes, but sometimes he picks the weirdest time to want to run the ball 6 times in a row.
Right.
Especially when the first 5 didn't work or whatever, and you're going, okay, well, certainly here he's going to go back to passing, and then we'll maybe try to throw a run in. The Saints have always ran better when they're doing that, mixing it up and keeping the other team off guard, and they're throwing runs in. Saints are just not a line up and run the ball, 3 yards in the cloud of dust kind of team. Just that simple.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that a lot of people understand the West Coast offense, and a lot of the short passes are considered extended runs. And
right.
A sweep, they throw it out to the second receiver that steps back from the line of scrimmage and all. And that makes sense to me if we're actually averaging 3.3 yards a carry when we just carry the ball and run up the middle. This game, we didn't do the sweeps. We ran up the middle, and our 2 running backs averaged 4.1 and 4.3 yards a carry. And I mean, again, pretty simple math. 3 of those is 12 yards. I know that you don't get it single time.
Yeah, but that's the thing, Wesley. Most of the good runs that brought that average up, I think, came when it was mixed up in the middle of some passing and they were able to catch the Chargers off guard. Don't you think?
I feel like
no, I can't say
go
that
ahead,
it's
Wes.
such a small sample size. Only 19 rushes with those 2 guys. And I agree. I know there was some better runs and there was some shorter ones. But I felt like, and I watched I couldn't watch the first half. I watched the second half of the There were a lot of 3.5 to 4.5 yard runs. It to me, when I watched it the first time, I felt like there was a lot of stopped at the line of scrimmage and then a lot of 7-yard runs. There was more in the 4-yard range than what I originally.
The Chargers actually, I think the problem is, and again, it's not that this is some kind of new thing. Defenses are going to be stout earlier as you wear them down a little bit. You're going to start being more productive in the running game, and early in the is really where my thoughts are coming from. Is early in the game where the Saints seemed like they were just determined to run the ball, and they would run. And, I think there was a nice run early by Murray, maybe a 7-yard run. And after that, it just seemed like it was a 1-yard run, a 2-yard run. And then kind of going with what Heath said later on in the game, once they opened it up and started throwing the ball a little bit more effectively, then you could see where there were only 4 men on the line of scrimmage, and the linebackers were off the line, and all of a sudden they'd run the ball and there was a 12-yard gain or 8-yard gain. So it's situational football. And so most of my thoughts came because, look, quite frankly, most of the feelings, the frustration comes from the first half. It's not the second half. The second half, the Saints actually, that was good enough football to win. The first half, just whatever it was, meaning 2 running plays and then an incomplete pass and then a punt, is not going to win you many football games. So, but since we were talking about this, I think it's time for a more broad discussion on the Taysom Hill thing. And I know the answers because maybe you've slept on it and feel different, but I think I've just soured on the whole Taysom Hill at quarterback thing. And I'll even take it to the next step. This is not a new position. I have never really felt like I hope that he could develop into, but I have zero confidence that Taysom Hill is the quarterback of the future. And half of that opinion is based on just what I see. The other half is the Saints obviously feel like if they thought that he was a capable NFL starting quarterback, that he would get more opportunities to throw the ball, because the way he runs it, if he mixed in a pass, and I know they did mix it in, he didn't throw the ball, but if they mixed it in and he actually completed a couple of passes, those runs would be wide open. Wesley, I'm gonna start with you this time.
Yeah, I like Taysom Hill. I've met him. He's a really nice guy. He's fun to watch when he's making contact and smiling. It's cool that he's a football player. He's very fast, all that stuff. And if we wanted to make him our number 2 tight end, or get rid of Michael Burton and make him our halfback so that we could do weird things with sweeps and tosses and reverses and all for it. I think he's an athletic guy, that there's a place for him to play football. I am not ignorant to the fact that guy is
I agree.
Powerful and should be on a football field. He is not a quarterback yet. He has not developed as a quarterback. Maybe this offseason was the time that he was supposed to. We didn't have an offseason. And for that reason, he does not need to be playing quarterback. Now, if Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Brees retired last year and we had signed Teddy and Teddy was our starting quarterback, it makes sense. Teddy Bridgewater's Teddy freaking Bridgewater. And maybe Drew Brees hasn't been the great Drew Brees this year, but he's still Drew Brees. And that's our best chance of him throwing those 4-yard passes, is right now our best chance of doing that, of winning, mixing in the run and him throwing his pass. Taysom Hill is not our best chance of winning. There's a reason he isn't the starting quarterback. It's just weird to me. And again, I hate that I feel like it's Peyton just wanting to be Peyton and wanting to be the smartest guy in the room, but it's not working. I want this team to win. I'm not the Drew Brees fan. I'm not a Taysom Hill fan. I am a Saints fan. I want these Saints to win football. I'd love for us to win the Super Bowl. Taysom Hill's not the one making us win games right now.
Heath.
No, I agree with that completely. I agree completely. I think that was well said. And, like I said during the game last night, the shine has definitely worn off the Taysom Hill penny for me. It's like man, especially like you said, if he's never going to actually throw the ball, then that is not a threat at all. Everybody knows it's coming. And they got lucky and executed it well enough and opened enough of a hole. Like Wesley said earlier, the worst thing that happened was he got into the end zone last night. And that we might continue to see this. I don't really know what to do with Taysom Hill. I'll be honest with you. I like the guy, and I agree he needs to be out there somewhere. I don't know if they need to pick just – yeah, I don't know if he just needs to play one position. Because as a gadget guy, he's never going to actually be the best player at any of those positions. You know what I'm saying? He's not better than Kamara or Murray as a running back. He's not better than Jared Cook or well, maybe as a receiver, he's better than Josh Hill. But he's not the best tight end on the team. He's certainly not the best quarterback on the team. I don't even think he's the second best quarterback on the team. Might not even be the third best quarterback. Somebody on the team probably played quarterback in high school that might be better than him at quarterback. The bottom line is they need to pick a spot for him. Hell, I think Wesley might have just came up with it. Burton's position I don't know if he's big enough, though, to be a lead blocker in the situations that, speaking of Burton, right after getting rid of the Taysom Hill plays, can we get rid of the fullback handoff, please? I don't ever want to have to pick up 1 yard on a 3rd and 1 and hand it to my fullback with no other blocking in front of him because I have my running back run out the other way as a decoy. Either hand it off to the guy, let Burton block, and hand it off to your running back, who, as Wesley pointed out, we're averaging over 4 yards a carry. You know, that play is okay every once in a while, like maybe every 5
A surprise.
Games, yeah, you know. But when you see it in 2 games, you definitely know you're running the fullback play too many times.
Right. All right. You guys have any final thoughts?
I certainly do.
Go ahead, Dan.
Guys, I have excellent news. Every single time in his career that Drew Brees has led a team back from 17 points down to win, that team has gone on to win the Super Bowl that year.
Good news, man.
In 2009, we came back against Miami. That game, we're getting blown out. We came back against Miami. Outside of that, with that game, where Drew Brees was 1-48 in his career in games he was down by 17 points. So
wow.
I mean, you know, that really does.
The guy that has as many comebacks.
That really does tell you what we saw last night was historic. I mean, that was no small feat for the Saints to accomplish last night. You know, I mean, we were frustrated. And then we're like, oh, the team's not good enough for this, that, and the other. The fact that they were able to do it does say a lot. And maybe that mere fact that they came back from that huge deficit the way they did tells you that they're maybe a better team than I'm feeling they are right now. Because it's all about feelings right now, right?
Yes.
All right, Heath, go ahead and give me your final thoughts.
Well, my final thoughts are just obviously, we head into the bye week. Let's hope that they can spend this time to get everybody completely healthy. Let's hope Michael Thomas doesn't punch anybody out between now and the next game. Maybe they can, I don't know what they need to do. I don't know if it's in the defensive backfield room where they all need to get together and take a hard look at themselves. I don't know if it's, like I said, I don't know what the hell's going on in the back of this defense, but they need to get it straightened out. Probably a good time for the bye week here. Come out refreshed. Hopefully, by the time we come back to the Superdome, the mayor will have seen it her way clear to allow some fans back into the game. And, maybe that'll energize this team for a run after this.
Oh my God, it's gonna blow!
It's a Tomas rant.
That's right, I don't want to hear these facts.
Daddy, she's gonna blow!
I have opinions.
I got a nuke coming in. It's gonna blow in less than a minute.
Facts don't mean anything to me.
It's gonna blow! It's gonna blow!
My opinion overranks the fact, okay?
It's gonna blow up, it's gonna blow up!
And she will. It is a mathematical certainty.
All right, let's bring in Tomas Mauricio. And I know this is going to be a rant. That's how we introduce you, my friend. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Doing all right. Hanging in there.
Okay, so last night, my biggest contention, and it's been this way since the offseason, man, are the Saints just simply not as good as we think they should be with the potential, with the team they have on paper? Because I think my expectations are just too high, Tomas.
Well, I don't think our expectations are too high. I think instead, I'm changing it. I don't think our expectations of the players are too high. I think we have some really outstanding players on this team, in particular in certain areas of the team. I think that our expectations have been dashed because apparently, as Sean Payton has gained weight, he has lost his ability to really not just call the game, but the innovation of plays. Because if I see that same play with Taysom Hill one more time, I'm going to jump through the television screen. I really think that's what it is. Seriously, I think that what's missing, one of us wrote last night as we were conversing with each other that in the 2-minute drill, Peyton wasn't calling the plays, but rather Drew was.
That was actually Wesley.
And we went right down the field with that, and then call a timeout. Oh, now all of a sudden, coach says, "Oh, I want this, this, and this," and then suddenly we bogged down.
I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with that completely, but did you notice at some point in the game they had a close-up on Breeze and Peyton, and you could see they were having a fiery exchange on the sideline?
Yes, I saw that, where I think Breeze was saying, "No, I want to call this play," and Peyton was like, "Hey, I'm the coach. We're calling that play." I mean,
that's what it looked like.
Were very intense with each other, which is, not usual for the two. So I saw that. I think a lot of people saw that was happening.
Now, Tomas, do you think that that's any influence from Michael Thomas, and now he's gotten Drew Brees and Coach Peyton ready to throw hands?
No, I actually like the way that Peyton dealt with the issue. I also like in the interview that Breeze gave, he said that the several players on the team have talked to Michael Thomas, and he himself, and Breeze also talked to Michael Thomas. It's really, in every profession, it's the same thing. When people get a taste of big bucks, they suddenly change their ways. I mean, it's really, there are people who you befriend and they're your friends because they're in the same level that you are, and suddenly they come into money. Well, then suddenly they go to a different group of people because they don't think you're good enough.
Well, money, or they find some type of fame, or maybe elected into a position of authority, and they change. It says a lot about a person's character when money or fame changes the way you behave.
It does. And it's so, to me, it's so bizarre because we've seen a Michael Thomas for all these, for the couple of years he's been there, never gave that appearance that he was a prima donna, that he was like, and suddenly, he blows up. And again, it wasn't the competitiveness on the field. We're all competitive, I mean, that's no big. Every team has fights during OTAs and spring training, and even
part of the game.
Yeah, it's part of the game, right? So I don't think that, from my understanding, it's the situation where he didn't want to apologize and he told the coaches off. Dude, what happened in Washington, the football team, with their starting quarterback who suddenly is number 3 and see you later, alligator. Right. It wasn't because of his lack of playing; it was because he dissed the coach.
Right.
You had to figure those things out. You don't talk bad about the boss and tell the boss to go in. You won't be there anymore. So I think I'm hopeful that that's going to get straightened out. I think that maybe Peyton is putting pressure on himself. It's really hard to get a team with so many different moving parts and do something different. You and I know a team that's successful this year, as soon as the season is over, the defensive coordinators, the defensive coaches sitting there with all that tape going, there's got to be a way to stop this.
Right.
So, Taysom Hill, again, as I say to you, if I see that play one more time, dude, everybody in the league knows that play. You can't keep running it. You got to do something else. And as I've said before, it's time for a decision. I appreciate that you thought he was this wonderful jack of all trades. Time to make a decision. If he's going to be a quarterback, then let him play quarterback. Don't make him run the ball every time like he's a fullback or he's a tight end. Make your decision. If he's not going to be good enough for quarterback, fine. Then let him play all the other positions he plays. Don't put him in a quarterback. You got a kid there who has a possibility. He's a young enough fellow. He's only 26.
Jameis Winston.
He hasn't had the kind of coaching that he really needs. He's got an ideal opportunity working with Breeze, working with the other 2 offensive minds besides Peyton and the team. He's got a real chance to, put his ship back on the right course. Well, let's find out if he is or he isn't. Put his behind in there to play. Now, if he's throwing interception after interception, making bad decisions, then okay, he can't be fixed. We're done.
Well, Tomas, hold on a second now. Let me clarify here. Are you suggesting that he needs to play now Or are you saying give Jameis Winston a chance to play now?
Just as we have packages for Taysom Hill, we should have packages for Jameis Winston. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying he plays a quarter. I'm not saying he plays, no, I didn't say that. But they have to be packages. Just that would throw, imagine nobody else is going to be ready for that. You come back after the break, and instead of putting Taysom Hill in there, you put Jameis Winston in there. Hey, there's no video except Tampa. They had nothing with him with the Saints, any of the formations,
No doubt you would throw a monkey wrench into a defensive coordinator's preparation, but I don't know, golly, especially now. Listen, if the Saints would start on a losing streak and we get to the point where it's pretty obvious that we're not going to be a playoff team, then maybe Drew Brees gets that, oh man, my shoulder's hurt, and go on IR for 3 weeks and come back for the last home game and give him I just don't know how the Saints would just pull Drew Brees off the field. I mean, he's done too much for the community. I wouldn't support it.
Do they not pull him off the field for Taysom Hill?
Well, for a play here or play there. So, if that's what you're saying, because Taysom,
I'm not saying to use Jameis and Winston. Like I said, it's not a quarter, it's not a series. I'm just saying, in a specific spot, you should have a package for him and say, hey, you know what, kid, gonna go in there and see what you can do. Run a play.
I don't know if I support that, but interesting thoughts. Now let's talk a little bit about, I saw some statistics today that really made me start thinking. It was about the defense and how many points they've given up, and what the record of the teams who've given up that many points, what their records are, and they're all losing records. But then they talked about the offense and the teams that average 30 plus points in their records. So the Saints are in the middle of a very confusing situation. Teams that put up as many points as the Saints do win. Teams who give up as many points as the Saints do lose. What is going on with the Saints and their defense's inability? And it's just dropped coverage. It's making mental mistakes. And I'm not saying they don't have physical mistakes as well, but Monday night was just a lot of mental mistakes, just dropping coverage.
All right, so a couple of things that I can talk about there. It is obvious that the strength of our defense is the defensive line. We've got guys in there that are really balling out, okay? It's obvious that the weakness on our team is the defensive backfield. Now, we wouldn't have thought that. We thought, well, Lattimore, all pro, Janorius, Yeah, well, Janorius is hurt. He's not in there. Now, can we not learn the lesson from the past? P-Rob is not a cornerback. P.J. Williams is not a cornerback. So if you're expecting them to play cornerback, it's going to be feast and famine, okay? Because on that play where P-Rob got burnt, it's so obvious. He's backing up. He's hesitating. The guy flies by him. Too late. You don't have that kind of speed to recover when the guy's 6 steps ahead of you. So now, would Janorius have made that mistake? I don't know, but I'm thinking probably not. So let's be realistic here. Lattimore, for whatever reason, when he shows up, but he's gotten into a habit of not showing up. The final play of the game, God bless him. He made up for a lot of the mistakes he made during the game by grabbing that young. Yeah, and he bent them backwards. Even when Davis comes in and hits him from behind, and I'm like, oh no, but he didn't let go and he bent them back. Okay, thank you. You did a great
And you're not talking
play.
about a small receiver. Mike Williams is a beast.
Exactly. But he held on and he got the job done. Okay. But during the game, I know you saw this, Dave. During the game, lackadaisical playing by Lattimore. It's like, hey, I'm all pro. I just hang right here and I can cover you. No, dude, you got to step up every play. So, and I don't know what's in his head, but it's not good.
Well, to me, Tomas, the scariest thing about it is that the guy's coming up for a contract, and you know how the NFL works. It's not necessarily that you're the best guy, you're just the next guy. And the fact of the matter is the Saints have waited and looked for a cornerback that can do what he does when he does it well for a long time. And there's nothing worse than having to pay top money to keep a guy because he's rare, but really that he can play big, but he also is inconsistent. So it's, you just hate to pay top dollar for a guy. You know, how many quarterbacks have we seen where you the next guy up and you get the big money, and you're nowhere near as good as the other guy who deserved the big money. You know what I mean?
Yes. I agree with you. But it's obvious, we're playing PJ Williams, we're playing P-Rob, and they're really, maybe slot receiver is the best for them. PJ has the ability to go between slot and safety. Okay. But neither one of those guys is going to be a press corner guy. They're just not, and okay, that's a problem. Now, we've said this before. The more pressure our defensive line can get in, then the better they're going to look in the backfield,
Absolutely.
So now I have a problem. Your boy showed up yesterday, even though he only has one move, which is just, bull
it's kind of a bull rush, but at the same time, he creates he creates pressure.
So, okay. Now, my boy, the guy you talk about,
Hendrickson.
Man, that dude has been playing hard every game.
You can't take anything from him.
Every game.
Well, to me now, and I am a fan of Davenport, and as I've said already in the show several times, is that it's not that he's all world. It's just that the pressure that fans are putting on him is unwarranted. He's a good player, and he is disruptive, but he does have a unique game where he's good against the run. He's not really a speed rusher. He makes sure that he pushes that tackle back into the quarterback. That quarterback knows he only has so much time to throw the ball. And the thing about it is we now have a good 3-man rotation. Hendrickson has proven that he's a good player.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, Cam Jordan has been a little.
Now you got to my issue here. And I'm going to say this, and people are going to know, what? If Cam Jordan, he's either injured or he just, doesn't have fuel in his tank. I don't know. But maybe he needs a wake-up call. Maybe he needs to go sit on a bench and you play Davenport on one side and Hendricks on the other side and say, you know what? We're good. We got Onyemata in the middle. Rankins sometimes shows up, whatever it is, We got Roach. We got Brown. We got a lot of players. You can rotate that middle in. You got Davenport on one side and Hendricks on the other. Because so far to me, all this rave review about, oh, he's so great. All these years he's been playing, he's a stud. What has he done for you lately?
Well, it's sad to say how followers and fans are, but the fact of the matter is all the expectations that we had for Super Bowls and stuff was that we would improve in some areas, and what you're going to get with guys like Cam Jordan, that he was going to be there. You don't have to worry about him. But even if you have another guy step up like Hendrickson has, well, if Cam Jordan isn't playing to what we expected, then you just have the same problem. So, Tomas, thank you so much.
Oh, okay, brother.
Thank you so much for your time. We love having you on, and the Skype, or what are we doing here? Zoom thing. Zoom. We miss having you in the fray, but we'll talk to you next week. Or actually, we have a week off, but we'll get you back in here and we get some more of your insight.
All right, brother. Thanks very much.
Take care. Well, that's all the show we have for you. The Saints are off next week, but I'm sure that we'll have some content for you, so you stay tuned. Follow me on Twitter at SaintsBS, and we can talk some Saints football in the meantime. For Heath Elson-San, Tomas Mauricio, and Wesley Coleman, I'm Dave Romero, and you've been listening to the BS and Beer podcast crew, and we'll talk to you later.
And anyway, the person who sits here is but the most conspicuous member of a superb team of journalists, writers, reporters, editors, producers, and none of that will change. Furthermore, I'm not going away. I'll be back.
And that's the way it is.